jours à peine avant la sortie du jeu, et 2 semaines après vous en avoir présenté une avant-première dans le dernier classé 18+, cela nous paraissait être un bon moment pour vous reparler du très attendu Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, d'autant que nous avons eu l'occasion de rencontrer ce monsieur.
My name's Dave Cox, I'm the studio head at Konami Digital Entertainment and I'm also the producer of the Castlevania Lords of Shadow series.
Dave Cox donc, producteur de la série Lords of Shadow depuis le premier épisode, et un producteur assez impliqué si l'on se fie à la manière dont il décrit son poste.
My role as a producer is really to make sure that the development team get over the finish line. It's to provide motivation, to make sure that the team are working, to the schedule, and making sure that they are able to deliver their creative vision. At the same time, I'm quite creatively involved in the development, so I co-wrote the story. I also have final say on art direction and things like that. So I work alongside the director, so it's very similar to a movie, where you have the director who's the main guy who's running things, and the producer's there to support the director and to make sure that the director's vision is actually up there on the screen. I've been working on the Lords of Shadow series for about 7 or 8 years now, so I'm very closely integrated into the team at Mercury Steam.
Dire que l'on attend Lords of Shadow 2 avec une certaine impatience ne surprendra plus personne. Très original dans son approche de la mythologie Castlevania, le premier épisode avait également su renouveler une série qui, à quelques rares et souvent regrettables exceptions près, était restée enfermée pendant de nombreuses années dans un schéma unique, imaginé par Igarashi Koji. Un schéma dont Mercury Steam a tenu à se démarquer, mais dont la popularité auprès du public a nécessairement fait une source d'inspiration.
I think we've always looked to the past. On the previous games, and very much so the classic games from the 8-bit era. But I think on Lords of Shadow 2, we got a lot of feedback from fans that they wanted to see more of the exploration, they wanted to see more of the things, that came from the more recent Castlevania games. So we consciously took that decision to, take some of those design choices, especially in terms of exploration and being able to backtrack and go back and have a more expansive world to explore. We wanted to take those elements from the modern games and incorporate that into Lords of Shadow 2. I think that, we always try to be respectful to what's gone on in the past, but at the same time we want to create our own identity with the series. And I think in many ways on the first game there was a little bit of fear about pushing things too far, even though it's quite a radical take on the Castlevania mythos. I think in many ways we were a little bit afraid, but I think with the success of Lords of Shadow 1, it gave us a little bit of confidence with the second one, so that fear kind of went away. So in certain things in the game we've pushed the envelope a bit more. We've not been afraid to take some risks. And I think that's what's really exciting about Lords of Shadow 2. When you play it, it feels familiar, it feels like a Castlevania game, but at the same time it's doing so many new things, it's quite exciting, I think, for players. So I think this time around, we had the shackles of fear taken off us, and we could look back to the other games and use them as inspiration, but at the same time be very definite and say, this is our game, this is our take on the series.
Mais un des plus grands tours de force de Lords of Shadow reste sûrement d'avoir apporté une nouvelle vision de l'origine de Dracula, qui après coup semble couler de source.
We chose to make Dracula of Belmont right at the beginning of the development process of Castlevania Lords of Shadow. Our original brief from the senior managers in Japan was to create a new Castlevania, and our intention was to remake Castlevania itself and use Simon Belmont as the main character. But very quickly, during the very initial design stages, we felt it had already been done. They'd already done it with Super Castlevania 4, and oftentimes Castlevania games kind of doing the same thing over, and we wanted to do something different. So we decided then to tell Dracula's story, and we decided, pretty much probably in the first month of development, that it would be Gabriel Belmont, and Gabriel Belmont would become Dracula, and that the feud between Dracula and the Belmonts would be part of that. There would be this kind of this blood feud, this tale of revenge of where characters would do things and it would have a consequence on other characters, especially through the ages. And that was the kind of driving force behind the whole series, behind the whole idea of the Lords of Shadow series. And I think it's it really pays off at the end of Lords of Shadow 2. I think everything kind of comes together. I think in Mirror of Fate we hinted at this blood feud and how it came about, but I think all of these things, this element of family, this element of blood, it all kind of comes together at the end of Lords of Shadow 2.
Pour la première fois peut-être dans Castlevania, Lords of Shadow narre finalement davantage l'histoire de Dracula que celle des Belmont, en s'appuyant bien évidemment sur son personnage principal, Gabriel Belmont donc, ou Dracula, ou les deux. Plutôt Dracula en réalité, puisque Lords of Shadow 2 prend place après que la transformation en vampire a eu lieu. Le suceur de sang façon Mercury Steam s'éloigne d'ailleurs beaucoup de ses contemporains, très à la mode depuis quelques temps, et rappelle davantage une vision un peu plus ancienne du vampire. Un vampire plus sombre, plus violent, mais aussi finalement beaucoup plus humain.
Well, we wanted to create a Dracula that was a very modern vampire, but what we didn't want it to do was to do something that we've seen recently with vampires, which is kind of like a tamer vampire, if you like, the kind of stuff you see in Twilight, even in True Blood. We wanted to give a vampire that kind of went back to the old days, kind of scary, gritty, a very dark creature, that fed on people. But at the same time, we wanted to have a vampire that players could associate with. And in order to do that, he needed to retain part of Gabriel Belmont, the original character. So yeah, he does evil things in this game, and he does a lot of things that you'd expect of a vampire, but he also shows, remorse, he also shows forgiveness, he also shows love. He cries, so when you're playing 20 hours of a video game, you need to be able to have a character that you can identify with. You just don't want to have a character that's, just killing people, time after time. So we have these sort of quiet moments with the character, and we play a lot with, what's evil? Where does evil come from? What makes people evil? We ask that question a lot in the game, and we make you, as the player, do evil things with Dracula, with Gabriel. But at the same time, you see this character that I think draws a fine line between good and bad. I mean, I like to use the analogy of Tony Soprano. Tony Soprano is a character in a TV show that, does horrible things. He murders people, he rapes people, he does all these really horrible things. But, you find yourself as the viewer kind of rooting for him as a character. And I think that's a really difficult thing to achieve, and it's something that we've really tried to get that balance right with the character in Lords of Shadow 2.
Et si à certains égards ce nouveau Dracula rappelle fortement une certaine interprétation remarquée du personnage au cinéma, c'est tout sauf un hasard.
I'm a big fan of Gary Oldman's portrayal of Dracula. For me, that's a very, deep and nuanced performance by him, because, on the one hand you have the love story between him and Winona Ryder's character, and then on the other hand you have this kind of evil monster, and the way that he portrayed that evil monster was quite unnerving. And I really enjoyed his portrayal of that, and I think it's probably the best portrayal of Dracula I've seen. I'm a big fan of the movie Near Dark, which is a kind of an indie movie done by Catherine Bigelow back when she started her career, about a group of vampires sort of roaming the west of America. And that, for me, is a very dark, very edgy tale of vampires, and I don't think I've ever seen a movie like it since. So I prefer that kind of take on vampires than the more modern take on vampires. I like it to be scary, I like it to be gritty, because I think that's what vampires are really all about. So we took a few elements from the Gary Oldman performance and from the Francis Ford Coppola movie, and quite a few sort of unnerving elements from the Near Dark, and kind of amalgamated it into our character. And tried to make him a much more modern interpretation. We wanted to get away from that softer focus type of vampire approach.
Comme le film de Francis Ford Coppola, Lords of Shadow 2 nous montrera d'ailleurs deux facettes du même Dracula. D'un côté, il y a ce seigneur des ténèbres extrêmement amoindri au sortir d'un sommeil de plusieurs centaines d'années, celui qu'on découvre au début du jeu. Et de l'autre, il y a au contraire un Dracula au sommet de sa puissance, qu'on découvre lors de séquences oniriques prenant place dans son célèbre château. Une dualité qui, on l'espère, devrait faire tout le sel du personnage et qui semble avoir été traitée avec toutes les considérations de rigueur par Mercury Steam.
We have differentiated between the city and the castle. And when you go back to the castle, it's more of a dreamlike illusion. There's a dreamlike quality to it, and we play around with the thoughts of Dracula, and is this a dream? Is this his consciousness? Often he'll see characters that have died or passed on, or that he killed in the previous game, coming back to him to haunt him. But in the city, everything's kind of real and much more organic. It's much more kind of. And we deliberately play with lighting as well. When you go back to the castle, you'll notice the lighting's much softer and that kind of thing. And that's really important because, throughout the game, we're asking the player the question, what is evil? Is he evil? Is Dracula evil? Is Gabriel evil? Or is he trying to do good? And, I think, are good characters evil? Have they got evil intent? Are the evil characters really the good characters? We play around a lot with that, and we ask that question of the player. And I think we keep the player guessing right the way to the end. Is this a tale of redemption? Or isn't it? Is Dracula got an ulterior motive, or hasn't he? And I think that's one of the cool things, which I don't want to spoil now, about the story that really comes out in the game and keeps you questioning over and over again. So I think there is a kind of a splitting between this powerful Dracula vampire and this older, weaker character, and that's really emphasised with the environments and really emphasised in the storytelling. And at the end, these characters come together, and when they come together, it's a very powerful moment, which really gives a player a satisfaction when they reach the end of the game.
Et si Lords of Shadow 2 est attendu comme la conclusion de l'histoire de Gabriel Belmont, ce nouvel épisode est également très important pour la saga dans son ensemble, puisqu'il boucle une trilogie qui a tout d'un reboot, mais qui pourrait également rester indépendante. L'avenir nous le dira, mais pour Dave Cox, le plus important reste dans un cas comme dans l'autre, que le prochain développeur dispose de toute la liberté dont Mercury Steam a pu profiter au moment de se lancer dans Lords of Shadow.
I am curious to see what happens with the series now that we've kind of passed the torch on. So I'm as curious as a fan of Castlevania myself to see what happens next. I haven't really given it much thought about who it might be. I think whoever it is needs to have the freedom to do what it is they want to do with the series. I think that first and foremost should be the most important. And if they want to tell more stories in the Lord of the Shadow universe, I'd be totally up for that. And I'll be open to helping them or giving them advice or whatever. But if they want to, do their own thing or they want to do something in the old canon, I think you have to give people that freedom, that creative freedom, because that's where, the good ideas come from. I think if you're restrained or shackled to what people expect, you're never going to get out of that rut. You're going to just dig a deeper rut for yourself. So, I think there's a couple of development teams out there that could do a really good job, but who they are, I guess I'll be just as surprised as you are when we find out.
En attendant, on espère déjà être surpris par Lords of Shadow 2, dont l'histoire promet beaucoup, et qui porte les grandes ambitions manifestes de ses développeurs. Et si la prudence est évidemment de mise, on peut tout de même se dire qu'il est difficile de se tromper complètement en s'inspirant de Tony Soprano et du Dracula de Coppola.